Welcome to Claim Your Mind, where we rip apart lies, media propaganda, and expose the gut-wrenching truth about aviation safety. I'm Sid, and today we are tearing into a tragedy that spits in the face of Federal Aviation Administration's sacred mission to ensure the highest degree of safety. The FAA's pathetic Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin number NM-18-33 and its role in the Air India flight AI-171 crash on June 12, 2025. A crash that killed 260 people, and the FAA's empty monitoring promise failed them all. And yes, I hate to name people which I avoided in my previous podcast. However, seeing the interview again, I am now tempted to mention both the names involved in the short-sighted so-called expert discussion. I'm talking about Mr. Piers Morgan and Captain Steve's pilot blaming circus by Mr. Morgan asking a not-so-innocent question. Is it more looking like the plane functioned perfectly, correctly, therefore it was something done by the pilots, smearing Captain Sabharwal and First Officer Kundar, while Boeing and FAA, they skate free. And yes, Captain Steve, I agree with you. There is no procedure to put both fuel switches off in any commercial flight. However, where is the procedure to issue a mere advisory for a known catastrophic issue which was known since December 2018? Flying is not my forte, but risk management is. So it is well within my experience to mention that airworthiness is a serious business which begins with enforcements outside the cockpit. Please remember that, because once you are in the cockpit, you are on the mercy of electronic circuits and software. Was this a betrayal of the FAA's core values or a tabloid cesspool? Let's touch the fiction and demand answers. Strap in, because this episode will be no-hold-barred, ballistic, fact-based episode. The FAA's mission is to provide the safest, most efficient aerospace system in the world with the values of safety, integrity, and excellence. AAIB NM-18-33 issued on December 17, 2018 was supposed to embody that. The SAIB flagged a deadly flaw in the fuel control switch part number 4 Tango Lima 837-3 Delta on Boeing 737 and also 787 aircraft. The issue? The switch's locking mechanism could disengage, letting it slide from run to cutoff without the pilot lifting it. And remember, when you're taking off, such probability exists even more because the turbulence that happens or the shaking of the aircraft that happens when it's lifting from the ground, the takeoff. Mr. Steve mentioned in the Piers Morgan interview that fuel cutoff switches are a simple system, and he could partially be correct, taking into consideration a narrow cockpit-only view of the entire system. With all due respect to Captain Steve, I would take an opportunity to correct him that the fuel cutoff switch is a complex system which might seem to be mechanical in the cockpit, but let us not forget that behind the scenes of these simplistic switches is a complex electronic circuitry and the FedEx system which finally controls the fuel flow to the engine. That's not a glitch, it's a catastrophe waiting to happen, capable of killing engines mid-flight. But here's where the FAA betrayed its own mission. They made this an advisory bulletin, not a mandatory airworthiness directive. They simply said, guys, check your switches, and claimed it wasn't an unsafe condition. Fuel cutoff switch movement, cutting off supplies to the engine is not an unsafe condition? Then what would be an unsafe condition? And I'd really wonder what FAA considers as an unsafe condition. The FAA promised to continue monitoring the issue, but where is the proof? This isn't safety or integrity. It's a mockery of the FAA's core values, and 260 lives paid the price. June 12, 2025, Air India flight AI-171, a Boeing 787-8, takes off from Ahmedabad, India, heading to Gatwick, London. Seconds after liftoff, both engines die. The plane slams into a medical hostel, killing 240 on board and 19 on the ground. 260 lives perished, all within seconds. The preliminary report from India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau is damning. Both fuel switches were in cut-off position, starving the engines of the all-important fuel. Air India never inspected those switches despite SAIB NM-18-33's warning, because it was just an advisory. People are livid, screaming. Why wasn't FAA SAIB advisory mandatory? A switch that can kill both engines isn't a suggestion, it's a crisis. The FAA's failure to enforce action spits on their own mission to prioritize safety. And while the FAA dodged accountability, the media, led by the likes of Mr. Piers Morgan and Captain Steve, decided to play dirty, and it's beyond disgusting. As a risk management expert with deep experience at GE aircraft engines and other mission-critical businesses, I've spent substantial time being involved in risk management processes that feed into aircraft engines' airworthiness processes and safety protocols. From a risk management perspective, I'm fully aware of what it takes to certify an aircraft as airworthy. It's a rigorous, data-driven process involving thousands of checks and not a YouTube hot take. So when I see Mr. Morgan's July 15, 2025 interview with Captain Steve, a YouTube aviation guru milking the Air India crash for views, I'm appalled. They suggestively smear Captain Sumit Sabharwal and First Officer Clive Kunder, peddling suicide theories because Mr. Sabharwal's mom died in 2022 and Mr. Kunder's dad had a medical condition, and all these insinuations veiled in form of leading questions. I fail to understand the logic of such veiled insinuations. By that logic, I am unfit to host this podcast. You know why? Because my coffee spilled this morning. Kind attention, Mr. Morgan and Captain Steve. Personal grief doesn't make you a suicidal pilot. The Indian Commercial Pilots Association, the ICPA, call this a gross violation of ethical reporting, and the ex-users branded it tabloid garbage. And I agree with that. The AAIB reports point to the fuel switches, not the pilots' heads. Yes, Captain Steve, who's flown Boeing 777s and 787s, gives Boeing and FAA a clean chit while trashing Captain Sabharwal and First Officer Kunder. Maybe Captain Steve should stick to flying and take an airworthiness class before spouting off about processes he clearly doesn't grasp. It's Captain Sabharwal and First Officer Kunder today, but God forbid, it could be any of the other pilots tomorrow. This is irony at its ugliest. The so-called expert ignoring a mechanical flaw pins a mental health soap opera with Mr. Morgan. What a despicable circus. Mr. Morgan wanting to take care of one's father is no reason to be suicidal. Death of a close one does not mean depressed. We have all gone through life's hardships, and these hardships do not severely affect our ability to work, flying inclusive. And Captain Steve, please do not tell me that being a pilot is more stressful than being a soldier. Would the same circumstances for a soldier adversely affect the ability to stand in the line of the duty? The FAA's mission demands accountability, yet SAIB NM-18-33's promise to continue monitoring the situation for the fuel switch is a hollow lie. As a risk management expert, I know monitoring means data, sample sizes, criteria, pass or fail rates. Where is it? There is zero public record of follow-up data. Nothing. If they monitored anything, it's locked in a vault, which is a betrayal of their transparency value. After the AI-171 crash, the July 11, 2025 continued airworthiness notification doubled down, claiming the issue did not warrant an AD. Are you serious? Air India never inspected VT-A and B switches despite throttle module replacements in 2019 and 2023. The AAIB report notes no defects were recorded on VT-A and B switches in the Boeing 787 since 2023, but without inspections. How would they know? The FAA's monitoring is a sham, unless they make available the record and the evidences of continued monitoring. Their refusal to release check details, sample sizes, criteria or results is a slap in the face of their mission of safety and excellence. If they have data, make it public. Now, lives depend on it. What about Boeing? They did nothing after the SAIB NM-18-33. No multi-operator message, no push for inspections. Post-crash, they dodged the responsibility, deferring to the AAIB and citing ICAO protocols. The AAIB report notes that 787's fuel switches are a spring-loaded locking mechanism, but if disengaged, vibration or contact could move it. That's a design flaw Boeing ignored, betraying the FAA's safety-first ethos. Let's talk about risk assessment. The FAA flunked it. A dual-engine shutdown is a 10 on 10 catastrophe, yet SAIB NM-18-33 gave no data on disengagement likelihood. No stats, no flight data monitoring, just, hey, by the way, check it out. Air India's safety management system failed. They skipped inspections, but the FAA's vague advisory set them up to fail. This isn't the highest degree of safety. It's a betrayal of FAA's core mission. This tragedy was preventable. The SAIB's fix was simple. Inspect the switches, replace, and that don't lock. It's cheap, quick, and could have saved 260 lives. But Air India ignored it, and the FAA didn't follow up. Now here's the fix. SAIB for critical systems need risk ratings, low, medium, high. The FAA must track compliance and publish check results, sample sizes, criteria, pass-fail rates to honor their transparency value. Boeing needs to redesign that switch to prevent accidental shutdowns, and the media stop the soap opera. Mr. Morgan and Captain Steve's Air India pilot bashing distracts from the FAA's betrayal of its own mission. The Air India AI-171 crash from Ahmedabad to Gatwick was a tragedy born of negligence. The SAIB warned us, but the FAA's hollow monitoring promise, Air India's inaction, and Mr. Morgan's vile interview with Captain Steve blaming pilots while ignoring Boeing and the FAA let it happen. Social media gurus like Captain Steve should stick to flying and learn airworthiness processes and controls before giving regulators a pass. It's Captain Sabharwal and First Officer Kunda today, but God forbid, it could be more pilots tomorrow. The FAA betrayed its mission of safety, integrity and excellence. Subscribe to Claim Your Mind for more, and do comment if FAA's betrayal was, or it was Mr. Morgan and Captain Steve's blame game which is more disgusting. Let's demand safer skies. Keep questioning, keep your minds open, fly safe. I'm Sid and this is Claim Your Mind. Good luck and take care. Bye-bye.